The year was 1991, and the world of bodybuilding was gearing up for one of the most important moments in its history. On September 14th, thousands of fans packed the Walt Disney World Dolphin Hotel in Orlando to witness the 27th edition of the Mr. Olympia, the sport's ultimate event since its creation by Joe Weider back in 1965. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, tension, and curiosity. Everyone knew something big was about to go down. This Olympia wasn't just another contest. It came right after the controversial 1990 edition, marked by strict drug testing that sparked backlash and split opinions across the bodybuilding community. Fans were hungry for a clean, powerful, and exciting show, something that could wipe away the shadow of the previous year. The IFBB knew it had to deliver a spectacle worthy of the sport's legacy to win back trust and excitement. The crowd wanted action, drama, rivalry, and they were about to get all of it in generous doses. At the same time, a serious external threat loomed over the IFBB throne: the rise of the WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation, created by Vince McMahon. This new organization was throwing serious money around, grabbing attention, and had already pulled 13 professional athletes away from the IFBB in its debut. Think about the impact at the time: a cash-loaded rival with aggressive marketing and a mission to shake the entire scene. The IFBB had to prove it was still the true home of the world's greatest bodybuilders. This Olympia would become a real test of power and prestige. And as if that tension wasn't enough, rumors swirled around the central figure of the event, Lee Haney, the reigning 7-time champion. Behind the scenes, people whispered about his massive contract with TwinLab, a direct competitor to Weider Nutrition, the company owned by the very creators of the Olympia. For many, that raised eyebrows and questions about possible conflicts of interest. Would they really let Haney win an 8th title? Would backstage politics influence the outcome? Those questions hung quietly in the minds of fans and athletes alike. The result of this explosive mix was an event that kicked off with electric energy. Around 3,000 people filled the venue for prejudging, and more than 4,000 packed the theater for the night show, one of the largest crowds in Olympia history. The audience wasn't there just to watch. They were there to be part of something historic, and they had no idea they were about to witness a legendary showdown, a defining clash between two eras of bodybuilding. When we talk about the 1991 Mr. Olympia, we're not just talking about a competition. We're talking about a true collision of eras. At the center of it all stood Lee Haney, the undisputed king, owner of 7 titles and chasing a record that could place him above every other name in bodybuilding history. Haney knew that winning his 8th Sando would lock in his legacy forever. It wouldn't just be a win, it would be his permanent signature on the sport. Even with all that confidence, Haney wasn't completely at ease. His preparation for this Olympia felt different. The rise of new challengers, especially a massive newcomer from England, brought extra motivation and a serious warning. Haney was ready for war. He knew that to come out on top, he'd have to present the best physique of his entire career. That reality only made the pre-contest tension even thicker. When a champion is about to defend his crown for the 8th time, every detail matters. On the other side of the stage stood a rookie who was about to make history, Dorian Yates. After winning the Night of Champions, he instantly became the top challenger to the throne. His stage presence was impossible to ignore, showcasing a dense, rock-hard physique with deep cuts, a look that hinted at the revolution he would bring to the sport in the years ahead. Yates felt like the future, and the crowd could sense it. Every time his number was called, a wave of applause rolled through the theater, as if everyone knew they were witnessing the birth of a legend. Beyond the two central giants, the 1991 lineup was stacked with competitors who could shift the balance of the battle. Vince Taylor, with his classic lines and flawless stage presence, was always dangerous. Lee Labrada, the embodiment of aesthetic perfection, looked like a living work of art, even if his smaller frame put him at a disadvantage against the mass monsters of the era. Sean Ray, young and explosive, represented the next generation ready to claim its place. And Sonny Schmidt, with a back so wide it seemed to unfold like wings on stage, rounded out an incredibly high-level field. This combination, Haney's reign, Yates' meteoric rise, and a lineup packed with elite talent, created a one-of-a-kind atmosphere. It felt like watching a showdown written by destiny. The prejudging at the 1991 Mr. Olympia wasn't just a technical round. It was the moment the crowd realized they were watching history unfold. The 27 athletes lined up on stage formed one of the strongest lineups of the era, including rookie Mike Matarazzo, who had received the only wild card of the year. The energy was intense. Every number call sparked a reaction from the crowd. But there were two men everyone was waiting to see side by side: Lee Haney, number 4, and Dorian Yates, number 17. This was the face-off that would make the entire bodybuilding world hold its breath. From the very first impressions, it was clear that neither man was willing to give up an inch. Haney stepped on stage with his trademark shoulder width, an imposing presence, and arms that looked fuller than in previous years. His look screamed muscle maturity, even if he wasn't quite as razor-sharp as some people expected. Yates, on the other hand, hit the stage like an avalanche. Thick, brutally dense, insanely conditioned, legs that looked carved out of granite, and a back that instantly drew murmurs from the crowd. You know that moment when you see someone on stage and think, this guy is different? That was exactly the effect Yates had. As the rounds moved on, the essence of the battle became crystal clear. Yates dominated in density and conditioning. Every pose felt like it sliced through the air with precision. Haney, meanwhile, reminded everyone why he was the king. His width, flow, and classic lines gave him a visual elegance that many believed was impossible to beat. It was like watching two philosophies of bodybuilding collide: aesthetic versus brutal, classic versus futuristic. And that collision made every comparison even more intense. When the first true head-to-head between the two finally happened, the theater erupted. In that moment, every detail mattered. Yates clearly had the best legs on stage, with a rear chain that was simply unmatched, deep cuts, layered muscle, everything popping. But Haney held his ground. His upper body, especially his shoulders, chest, and lats, was still the most complete and balanced package there. It felt like each man was pushing the other to a higher limit, and the crowd, completely hypnotized. By the end of that round, the consensus was that it was extremely close. Many felt Yates had pushed the champion to the ropes, but not far enough to knock him down. Haney's experience, built on 7 Olympia titles and an incredible ability to command the stage, allowed him to steady the fight. Still, the message was loud and clear. This Olympia was not going to be easy for the champion. In that first direct duel, the judges faced a genuinely difficult call. Haney controlled more poses overall, especially those that relied on balance, symmetry, and width. Yates, meanwhile, shocked everyone with his sheer visual power, conditioning, and uncommon mass. The battle was so technical that even the smallest mistake could have shifted the judges' perception. Despite Yates' impact, though, it wasn't quite enough to flip the round. So the technical verdict of that first block was clear. Yates had come dangerously close, but Haney still held the edge. Not through brute force, but through presentation, structure, and the way he owned the stage. Then referee Wayne D'Amelia called just 2 names, Lee Haney and Dorian Yates, and the theater absolutely exploded. Everyone seemed to instinctively know they were witnessing a moment that would live forever. No groups, no wide comparisons, just one versus the other. The champion against the challenger, the past against the future. The two men squared off, face to face, and the tension was almost physical. When the call for the first pose, the front double biceps, echoed through the hall, the balance was so perfect that it ended in a tie. Neither man gained ground there. It felt like a handshake before the real war began. But then came the next pose, and something shocking happened. In the front lat spread, one of Haney's signature poses, Yates actually beat him. The crowd reacted instantly, as if they had just witnessed the impossible. For the first time, there was a visible crack in the champion's dominance. From that point on, Yates started to build momentum. The side chest exposed his unreal muscle density, and once again he pulled ahead. Haney fired back in the rear double biceps, a pose where his width and classic structure still shined. But then came the rear lat spread, a razor-thin tie that split opinions even among photographers and experts. Every movement showed just how hard both men were pushing themselves to the absolute limit. It was in the final poses that Yates truly sealed the impact of the battle. In the side triceps, his hardness and deep muscle detail spoke louder than anything else. And in the abs and thighs, his brutal definition and extreme conditioning made one thing clear. That round had a winner. Yates didn't just compete, he shocked the world. For the first time, it genuinely felt possible that Haney's reign might be on the verge of being broken by a rookie. The conclusion was unavoidable. Dorian Yates clearly won that second head-to-head, and that was the moment the crowd realized history could change right there, in front of their eyes. Haney was still the champion, but now he was facing someone who didn't just want the throne. He wanted to redefine the entire sport. When the theater lights dimmed and the first notes of the evening routines echoed through the room, the atmosphere shifted completely. This was no longer a technical battle. It was about spectacle, emotion, and charisma. This was the moment where each athlete could express himself, telling his story through posing, music, and stage presence. And the man who opened this chapter at full force was none other than Lee Haney, revisiting the epic Excalibur soundtrack he had used for his very first title back in 1984. The instant the music started, a wave of nostalgia rolled through the crowd. Everyone knew they were about to witness something special. Haney stepped on stage looking even fuller than he had earlier in the day, displaying an impressive level of muscle fullness. Every pose felt carefully crafted to project both power and emotion. His energy filled the arena, and even his posture made it clear he was fighting for something bigger than a title. He was defending his legacy. Many considered it the best routine of his entire career. Charismatic, powerful, and loaded with meaning. When the lights went out and the final note faded, the crowd rose to its feet in unison. In that moment, it was impossible not to feel it. Haney wasn't just posing. He was saying goodbye in grand fashion. Moments later, Dorian Yates took the stage to the soundtrack of Conan the Barbarian. The contrast between their approaches couldn't have been clearer. Where Haney was drama and emotion, Yates was raw power and precision. His routine was straightforward, aggressive, and stripped of any unnecessary flair. Every pose landed like a punch, showcasing mass, density, and a clear intention. He wasn't there just to participate. He was there to conquer. Even though he was slightly less sharp than during prejudging, Yates' presence was still monstrous. With a simpler style, he held the audience's attention through sheer physical dominance. But the man who truly stole the show that night was Vince Taylor. His legendary Terminator routine sent the theater into a frenzy. Blending technique, theatrical flair, and originality, Vince turned his presentation into a mini-spectacle. Every movement flowed with choreography, creating a visual story that completely captivated the crowd. It was impossible not to smile, not to be impressed, not to jump out of your seat. His performance drew massive applause and cemented his status as one of the greatest showmen bodybuilding has ever seen. The night routines revealed something that mandatory poses don't always show: soul. There, under the spotlight, each of those athletes displayed more than muscle. They revealed intent, emotion, style, and history. When the 6 finalists were called back to center stage for the final pose down, the entire theater felt like it was about to explode. Everyone sensed they were witnessing one of the most intense moments in bodybuilding history. At that point, there were no protocols, no clean lines, no formal comparisons. There was only adrenaline, competition, and the pure will to win. The athletes began moving across the stage like gladiators in a final battle, and the crowd responded with screams, applause, and an energy that felt like it could lift the roof off the building. But among those 6 giants, 2 men commanded all the attention: Lee Haney and Dorian Yates. And it was Yates who took the initiative. Determined to confront the champion head-on, he repeatedly moved toward Haney, literally trying to share the same space with him. The message was unmistakable: "I'm here to challenge you." Haney, meanwhile, tried to keep some distance, as if attempting to control the chaos and stick to his strategy. The moment that defined the pose down happened when Sean Ray, without realizing it, ended up between Yates and Haney. For most athletes, that would have been a non-issue. For Yates, it was an obstacle, and he did what very few would dare to do on a stage that big. He simply shoved Sean Ray aside, forcefully clearing space to stand next to Haney. The theater went absolutely insane. That wasn't just competition, it was instinct, hunger, and a raw expression of the desire to be the best. From that point on, the pose down turned into a full-blown boxing match. The 2 men traded poses like punches, most muscular, lat spreads, double biceps, all delivered at maximum intensity. Sweat poured, veins bulged, and the crowd screamed with every exchange as if a knockout was moments away. It was impossible to look away. Every second felt like an eternity. Pure, unfiltered emotion. In the end, the pose down wasn't just about physiques. It was about soul. Haney, the established champion, fighting to preserve his reign with class and control. Yates, the rising giant, pushing forward, imposing himself, and showing the world that the future had already arrived. When it was finally time for the last announcement, the entire theater seemed to hold its breath at the exact same moment. This wasn't just another result. It was the definition of an era, the closing of one chapter and the birth of another. One by one, the names were called, each round of applause honoring the journey of every athlete. In 6th place, Sonny Schmidt. 5th, Sean Ray. 4th, Lee Labrada. 3rd, Vince Taylor, who was briefly met with boos from the crowd, only to stop them himself with a humble gesture, calming the audience and earning their respect. All of it was building toward the moment everyone was waiting for. Who would win the battle of the century? The announcement of 2nd place, as always, was the real reveal of the champion. When Wayne D'Amelia opened the envelope and said, "2nd place, receiving $50,000. Dorian Yates," the theater erupted. A storm of applause filled the room as Lee Haney raised his arms, celebrating his 8th Mr. Olympia title. The margin between them? Just 3 points. One of the closest finishes in Olympia history. Haney won rounds 1, 3, and 4, while Yates took round 2, the muscularity round. A razor-thin battle, intense and worthy of two giants. The weight of that result was massive. By claiming his 8th Sando, Lee Haney became the first athlete in history to ever reach that mark. He surpassed Arnold Schwarzenegger in total titles and permanently cemented his name as one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. It was a historic moment on the scale of an Olympic final or a world record being shattered in front of a roaring crowd. Haney didn't just win, he entered eternity. Then came the shock. Right after receiving the trophy, Haney announced his retirement at just 31 years old. Young, at his absolute peak, undefeated, and walking away as the undisputed champion. It felt like the perfect ending to a flawless reign. At the same time, though, that announcement lit a different fire in the audience. The certainty that Dorian Yates would be the next man to dominate the stage. The future was already written, and everyone could feel what was coming. The 1991 Mr. Olympia didn't just mark the final coronation of Lee Haney. It also signaled the birth of a new era, the Mass Monsters era. Starting the very next year, with Yates taking the throne, bodybuilding would shift toward a heavier, denser, more extreme direction. To truly understand the greatness of the 1991 Mr. Olympia, it's not enough to look at the results or the technical comparisons. You have to see it through the eyes of those who were there, sitting in the audience, walking the hotel halls, crossing paths with legendary athletes, and feeling firsthand the energy that only a historic moment can create. From the very first hours of that weekend, something felt different. There was an almost electric anticipation in the air, as if everyone knew they were about to witness something that would be remembered for decades. People in the crowd later described almost surreal encounters in the hotel hallways. Bob Paris walking by, perfectly tanned, Francois Benfato relaxing in the sun, Lee Labrada cutting through common areas trying to dodge fans, Samir Banout chatting casually with admirers. Every encounter reinforced the same feeling. Never before had so many elite athletes, all in incredible condition, shared the same space at the same time. Even off stage, it felt like stepping into a living temple of bodybuilding, where legends walked around like regular people, though no one truly believed they were ordinary. When Lee Haney stepped on stage for his night routine, the audience witnessed something that went far beyond technique or muscle. His performance was described as overwhelming, capable of drawing gasps and locking in attention, as if everyone were watching a true masterpiece unfold. Many experts and longtime fans consider this edition the last time bodybuilding displayed a perfect balance between classic aesthetics and the extreme mass that was about to take over. After reliving every detail of this legendary showdown, it's easy to see why the 1991 Mr. Olympia is remembered as one of the most emotional moments in bodybuilding history. But now I want to hear from you. Which part of this battle surprised you the most? Was it Lee Haney's epic farewell, Dorian Yates' crushing arrival, or the unique atmosphere of a stage that seemed to shake with every pose? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and love hearing what true fans of the sport think about these iconic moments. If this video brought you nostalgia, inspiration, or simply got your adrenaline going, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel and shows you want more deep, well-researched content like this. And if you'd like to support the channel even more, consider becoming a member. And if you're new around here, go ahead and subscribe. There's plenty more content like this, epic stories, detailed breakdowns, and videos that bring back the magic of bodybuilding's golden era. It costs nothing, and you won't miss a single upload. Before you go, make sure to click the video that's popping up on your screen right now. I picked something special so you can keep traveling through bodybuilding history. I'm sure you'll enjoy it just as much as this one. Click it now, and I'll see you in the next video.